Greetings and happy couple days before Christmas here from EMSNOW. I'm Eric Miskell. I've been looking forward to this interview with Dieter Weiss because it is the last time I will have to speak to him this year. So that's a good occasion here. Dieter, I see a little growth on you there. I like it.
Well, Eric, we are all getting older, and finally, I'm trying to make me look like what they say about me, grumpy old man.
Grumpy old man. I thought you were looking like Compass there. Um, Listen, I wanted to take an opportunity here. We've done a couple tours this year. Hope to do another one next year with you. But let's talk about Europe. It's been a tough year, EMS globally, but let's just talk about Europe for a bit here. As we're ending the year, kind of what's your sense of the general economic situation in Europe? And then what are you expecting next year in 2025?
Yeah, well, first of all, I've been speaking with several smaller EMS companies to try to get their figures. It's interesting because I get the feeling, and I only will know the final numbers when I finish the survey in January, February next year. But it looks like the smaller companies, small being less than, let's say, 20, 25 million, they seem to be getting through this situation a little bit better based on the fact if they do not have a concentration of customers. Yeah. Like, for example, if you have a small company and your biggest customer makes 40 to 50% and he suffers, you're going to be suffering as well. So, but there are small companies who have um, a broad base, customer base, and they are doing quite well. They are in the region of -3 to -6%. Yeah. Whereas what we see, and we've just seen the publication of the third quarter results of the big public companies, they're all talking about a decrease in the business in two-digit percentages.
Okay. And the big ones, are those European or are you talking global ones?
Well, I'm now talking European, like for example, last quarter for GPV -13%, La Croix -12.6, but there was an extra fact that they sold a special division. If they take that out, it's still 9.5. Scanfil -4.3. Again, Node and Keytron just reconfirmed their previously stated numbers, but they had been correcting their outlook in the past already.
Okay.
And Sycor -3.5% only. And that is on the organic growth. And if you take all the acquisitions, they actually had as far as I remember, a plus of 16 or 17% or even 19%.
Okay. Yeah, I want to ask you about the consolidation, the M&A later, but let's stick with just kind of the general sense in Europe. So within the industry, it looks like the year generally has been down. On average, what do you think it would be for the year?
Um, we are talking about in Western Europe about a minus of 10 to 15%.
Okay.
And I'm confident that due to the fact that the structure of the EMS industry in Eastern Europe is totally different, that it'll be lower in Eastern Europe. There we'll be talking about something in the region of -5 to -10%. You can imagine if we are talking about companies being subsidiaries of Western European EMS. In such a situation, they try to use the advantage of lower labor cost in Eastern Europe and shift products from Western Europe to Eastern Europe. So we do expect there in the factories a lower decline in the revenues.
Okay. Good. Well, let's talk about some. you sit in Germany. Germany has been described as the engine of Europe, right? So, uh, how's Germany doing? You know, we've heard about some problems within Germany. How's that going?
Well, you probably are referring to history books about Germany.
No, I'm
Um,
talking about recent history, like in the last year.
yeah. Um, my personal opinion is that Germany is in really big trouble. Yeah, and that trouble doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a totally false politics of a green left socialist government, which finally has gotten the right answer, and we're going to have re-elections in February of next year. So still the question is whether that's going to change a lot.
Mhm.
But we're having a lot of problems, and some of them refer to the automotive industry. The automotive industry has always been a strong engine of Germany. And if we take the biggest, for example, Volkswagen. Volkswagen at the moment is in big trouble, and they are discussing layoffs. They are discussing even shutting down factories. We have the same at Porsche, where they are talking about laying off 6,000 people and all of this. But you have as well, you have to look a little bit in the past. Those companies in the past made huge profits. They made so big profits that the unions demanded a fair share of these profits to be distributed among the operators, among the workers. And if we just look at Mercedes or Daimler-Benz, they had a profit sharing bonus, as far as I remember, last year of 7,300 uh, euros. Everyone, even the janitor, got
Mhm.
7,300 a check. Yeah. So, and the same goes for Volkswagen. Yeah. Um, would you believe that Volkswagen has the highest labor cost or the highest hourly paid salaries for operators uh, in the world for passenger cars? We are talking about 62 euros per hour. So, and now we are talking about this huge competition of cheap Chinese cars coming to Europe, and everybody, and at the same time, they're discussing why are we not selling any cars in China anymore? You know? And it's all being only focused on the fact, is it an electrical vehicle or is it a burner?
Mhm.
Now, that is, in my opinion, too easy. The point is that the cars are simply too expensive. Yeah? And they are expensive due to the fact that the workers working on these cars get too much money. But the unions will not uh, accept any cutting of the salaries and the wages of the people. But that is, in my opinion, actually what needs to be done. I'm really wondering when the idea comes up that they say we just need to write to our suppliers that they all need to reduce their prices by 10%. We've had that before 30 years ago with procurement manager from Mercedes called Mr. Lopez. And he wrote to all the suppliers that they needed to reduce prices by 10%. So the profits of Mercedes went up again. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they complied and they cut their.
Well, many complied because they were dependent, and
Ah.
that is another problem. And you might have heard that we have one company who already has the automotive in the company name called Deltec Automotive.
Mhm.
It's an EMS company with more than 100 million in revenues, 350 people, and they just filed for insolvency in early December, and it's it's a pity, yeah. But
Yeah.
that is what happens if the automotive industry demands from their suppliers that they reduce their prices every year by 2%.
So, so Dita, you're advocating for quite a change in the automotive industry within Europe there. So let me ask you, how realistic is it though that, once you taking something away from somebody is always more difficult than giving it to them. And reducing salaries, having all the workers and the unions agree to that, the chances of that are
Exactly. But
so.
see, this reduction actually, Eric, would just bring them onto a normal salary level that in all other industries are standard.
I'm assuming that the automakers are doing what the EMS companies are doing. They're trying to automate the hell out of everything, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, automation is part of the answer there for to make it, increase quality and reduce, overall costs.
Yeah,
Although
still
it
at
does
the
take an investment on on the capital equipment, but then it
yeah,
pays off.
still at the end they need some electronic equipment. They need some PCBAs, yeah, which
Yeah.
control everything. Yeah. If you look at the electronic share of a car, it's quite substantial. Yeah.
Yeah. So, can we
So
expect to
they
see
need the
you?
electronics industry.
So, can we be expecting to see you at the shareholder meetings for Mercedes and Volkswagen advocating for this?
No. No,
No, of course
no.
not.
Uh, uh, to be clear, I don't have a solution.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But I think it's too easy to just blame the suppliers
right.
and try to solve all problems on the back of the suppliers. The
Yeah.
suppliers are already suffering. In specific, this year, the EMS industry in Germany and France and in Austria. All
Mhm.
these three countries have a high share of automotive electronics being manufactured by EMS companies.
Okay.
Yeah, and they are all suffering. So
So
uh,
what you're advocating is for them not to just do what they habitually do, which is beat up on the suppliers and try to drive their costs down to get their own margins up. You're
yeah,
suggesting
they shouldn't do their own homework.
take a look at their own internal costs and what's happening there,
Yeah,
which is, I think, is listen. I think the OEM's internal costs are always an overestimated, excuse me, underestimated by OEMs factor that goes into the cost of their product. And I know that's true in the electronics industry, and we used to do work on that. So,
well, Eric, if you look at these, and I just saw a nice graph about the number of different types of cars Mercedes manufactures, and that was compared to a Chinese manufacturer. I think it was Build Your Dream, who it was compared to, and they have much less different type of cars. So that drives the cost up if you have too many. The other point is, uh, if you look at the specifications, the quality specifications, and the requirements by the automotive industry, what you need to document, yeah,
mhm.
you have your total. Your little sticker with your barcode on every PCB, they require you have to be able to exactly tell them when this PCB passed the solder wave or when it went through the reflow oven or whatsoever. And there are hundreds or thousands of engineers at the car manufacturers writing all these specifications. You know what my opinion would be?
What might that
Kick,
be?
kick half of them out.
Yeah.
Kick half of them. You don't need them. Yeah, you're over specifying a product. Yeah, kick them out. Yeah, send them home. Reduce your cost. That is the first thing. Yeah,
Yeah, I think reducing bureaucracy in any organization is a good thing, right? I think
yeah.
it tends to be pretty anti-democratic anyway, um, and it is a good way to increase efficiency. So I think you see that with the history of flatter organizations. We even see that within the EMS industry, right?
Mhm.
A flattening of those, and I think that's been a good trend. And I
Yes.
think other industries could certainly mimic that. So let's get back. So, was it the New York Times that had the article this week that Germany isn't Germany anymore? Something with that title, right? It was very kind of an opinion piece, obviously, but it speaks to the issue that that Germany, it seems like the shine has gone off the German economic model, and it needs to kind of rediscover itself or kind of right itself. How are you viewing that as we move forward into 2025?
Well, there's a lot of you remember yourself, and we talked about that this year as well. That in Western Europe, in specific, there was a lot of bashing of the Trump administration or Trump and the Grand Old Party, uh, which was totally out of reality. Yeah,
Mhm.
in Europe, the public press, which you could easily call, to use a word Trump uses, fake press, yeah,
Mhm.
um, was writing articles that 85% of all Americans were Democrats, and it was only a small amount of old white Republicans, and Trump would never win this election. Now he did, yeah.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, the situation changes, and they, rather than bashing, start listening. What are the plans of Donald Trump? Yeah?
Mhm.
He wants to reduce the administration in Washington. And
Yeah.
we have a second example in the world, and that is what is happening in Argentina at the moment. Um, for more than 40 years, the socialist governments, last one being Christina Kirchner, has robbed the state. They stole money, yeah, and they had a huge inflation and all of that. And then comes all of a sudden a guy called Milei. And this guy, first thing he says, well, I'm going to shut every second ministry. He laid off nearly 50% of all the people in the different departments,
Mhm.
the government departments. He um, eliminated, uh, I think, more than 10,000 regulations and laws that have been established, just causing the industry and the trade to have a huge headache. And all of a sudden, inflation goes tremendously down. And I think it's a good thing to watch Argentina closely in regards to how this continues in the future, because there is still a lot of people criticizing this. Yeah,
Yeah.
but we have to look for new ways if we want to make sure that we remain competitive. And just bashing China for all of our problems
Yeah.
is too easy.
Yeah.
We first of all need to make our own homework before we start bashing others.
Yeah, no, 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 and that's fair. You say it's easy. I've always called that type of thinking lazy. It's just
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
just it doesn't require much to say something like that. Hey, listen though, let's get back to the EMS a bit here too. Let's talk about a couple issues while I still have you there. As we're talking about Europe, we're talking about 2025. As you're looking forward, well, first of all, with everything going on, from a supply chain perspective, any concern about allocations or anything happening in the next year?
Well, I have had a nice workshop last week with the German Association of Distributors
Mhm.
called FBDI, and we talked about this issue as well. And they said, well, everybody was blaming us for the last problems of the semiconductor, but in actual fact, it was not us who caused the problems. It was the overreaction of the procurement managers and the purchasers who just doubled their orders in the hope that in a situation of allocation, they would get double the share. And thus, they created an artificial demand which had nothing to do with the end market.
Hmm.
And, and actually, that was something that neither the manufacturers nor the distributors could fulfill.
Hmm.
And due to that, they all talked about a shortage. Now, the point of that is there have been old studies about this phenomenon already in, I think it was in Harvard in the 60s. And I have to admit, I even hoping to get a book about this for Christmas, which I'm gonna read during the holidays. And that is the fact, and that is as well the opinion of the distributors. They think it'll happen again because the people do not learn from it. They do not learn that it does not help at all to all of a sudden double your orders. Yeah. Instead, they will continue to panic. And the FBDI, I think, is now 25 years old. They said, we've had 4 allocations already in that respect. And we're pretty sure there will be another allocation again. Yeah? Not today, not tomorrow, hopefully not next year, but it'll come. Yeah? And it might only take a rumor that something is short. And if that rumor can be
Hmm.
um, uh, can be um, 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 as well supported by some other argument, yeah, like for example with the chip crisis that
But I'm
NXP had to shut down 2 factories
right,
2 years ago.
But Dites, I'm hearing you say that doesn't speak very well of our supply chain processes and expertise, does it? If a simple rumor could trigger, listen, and our allocation's inevitable, I guess, in the future, and most things are
Yeah.
inevitable, right? So it's safe to say that they would happen again. But your comment about that, that a simple rumor could trigger it. You would think that we've learned something during this last debacle that over the last many years. And we've had a lot of smart people in this industry working very hard on putting together solutions and trying to fix the system so that, I would hope and I think haven't looked into it directly that those processes are getting better, that they would minimize a recurrence of what we've experienced here this last time around.
Mhm. Well, as I said, the FBDI thinks people don't learn from it due to
Hmm.
the history that they haven't learned from the last allocations either.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to explain the situation to the industry.
Mhm.
I don't know whether they all understand or willing to listen or willing to accept my arguments. I don't know. Um, but I think in such a situation, what you need is a stable supply chain, a stable demand based on actual demand from the end market and not some artificial stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
No. That's fair. That's fair. Hey, listen, the other thing I want to ask you about as we move forward is M&A. It sounds like despite everything and, as tough a year as it's been, Europe has been very active on the M&A front. We've seen quite a bit of activity. We've seen activity of Europe reaching outside of Europe, right? The European EMS companies looking globally to expand their footprint. So kind of how do you see the consolidation happening in Europe and the overall M&A appetite?
Well, number one is it started this year with Kontron taking over Cartec.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh, and that was the first big deal. But then, due to the economic situation, a lot of brochures were flying around in the market of companies being for sale. Uh, and it then happened one after one. We saw I think, in March, Sycor taking over several factories in the UK, making them finally the biggest EMS for defense electronics
Right.
in the UK. So that was one thing. We saw Actia in France buying Steel Electronic, Actia Aerospace.
Yeah.
We saw Lacon buying Montronic in Germany. Oh my God! And there were so many other deals there, and then it concentrated around electronica when um, EPSA was being acquired by the Zero Group. Zollner announced the joint venture with the Thailand
Yeah.
company Blue Chips. We saw after the electronica Profactors being acquired by Sycor. We saw several acquisitions in France by All Electronics. One was the EMS factory or EMS Porto, and the other one was um, uh, TX Tube. We saw Zycor buying an engineering company in Sweden, and then all of a sudden, Hansa, which already always had a little different approach, they are very much focusing as well on not only on electronics but as well on mechanics, and they have a lot of factories which are doing only sheet metal fabrication and similar things. They bought the Leiden Group in with 4 factories in Finland and 1 factory in Estonia.
Mhm.
And the Leiden Group itself had revenues of more than 100 million euros, um, being quite a big jump for Hansa, and one saw it as well a couple of days after in the development of the stock prices. And then I thought, well, for the second half, this was the biggest. But then came Bruno Racco, the CEO and owner of All Circuits in France. All Circuits having or being the biggest EMS in France, with factories as well in Tunisia. We visited that this year, and they have a factory in Mexico as well. And they are now being sold to a Chinese EMS. So
Mhm.
there is movement on that. And without mentioning names, but there are other companies from the Far East, China and India, who are interested in acquiring companies in Europe. And on the other hand, the other way around, in Europe, companies are looking into possibilities where they can acquire a nice EMS factory in the United States.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of activity going on, and it just depends whether you are on the buyer side or the seller side. It's
Right.
just a matter of how deep your pockets are.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of cash, yeah, if you have managed your company properly, you now have a lot of cash, and it's a good time to look to acquire someone who is not be doing that good. Yeah,
Right.
and if he is not doing that good, it doesn't mean that he's not doing good forever. It's just a matter of the market situation, and if
Okay.
he doesn't have sufficient cash, it might help him to join a bigger organization. So
Yeah.
there is this consolidation
Yeah.
ongoing.
So listen, we need to wrap this. We've been talking for a while here, but let me just ask you, as we're ending 2024, you look forward into 2025, what's your general prognosis for the EMS industry in Europe for 2025 and maybe even into 2026?
Well, I said that at Electronica already. 90% of people will tell me that I'm wrong,
Hmm.
because I can only give you an average. And
Hmm.
my estimation at the moment is that the market's going to pick up at the end of the first quarter, at the beginning of the second quarter. Now, now I know exactly that there are companies, and in actual fact, it's going to be about 20% of companies who have not suffered at all. Their revenues in 2024 have been better than in 2023. So they are the first one who say you are absolutely wrong because we didn't suffer. Yeah. So if we didn't suffer, there's no reason to pick up. We do our normal business.
Yeah.
Then there are other companies, and I have them as well, who in 2024 will be doing 30 to 40% less in revenues, which is already a very critical number. And they might even go that far and say, well, we don't see any of our customers now starting to order in bigger quantities again. And we think it's going to last until the second half of next year. And they will prove me wrong as well. And they say, well, no, we don't see that. Yeah, but as I said, it is like a Gauss distribution of whatever you do. That's the same if I say on average the EMS industry will suffer by 10 to 12% this year. Yeah, again, as I said, 20% will have not suffered at all. Others will have suffered much more. And that is the same what goes for the pickup of the business. Yes, there will be a pickup of the business. There will be sunshine again. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in between, we might have in the first and second quarter some heavy thunderstorms where people run out of cash. Yeah. And at this moment of time, the banks might not be willing to jump in and give them additional cash.
Right. Okay.
So
So
it's
I
going to
like
be exciting.
Yeah, the sun will shine again. I caught that in there besides with everything that you said. Now, I do know that your work will continue. You will continue, as you alluded earlier, you're preparing your survey. I would encourage all EMS companies within Europe who see this and who are contacted by in4ma to participate in the survey, to please participate. It is an important function, and listen, it's also rare because you're the only person doing this in any region in the world in any serious manner. And your research is excellent, and I think it serves a great purpose. And I know, having visited with many of the EMS with you in Europe, I know how well respected that data is and how important that is for the companies for their strategic planning. So the more the merrier in market research. I know that from experience. And so I certainly encourage all European-based EMS to please participate in that. If you're not contacted by Dieter about it, please contact him to participate.
Yeah, thank you.
Because more data is good for the industry. So good. Well, we need to end here, Dieter, before my time lapses. I just want to say thank you for a very fun year traveling around Europe. We had a couple of trips and to North Africa. It was an exciting year, an interesting year. I think we learned a lot, and look forward to 2025. And how should I end this? Ich wünsche Ihnen ein frohes Weihnachtsfest und einen guten Rutsch ins neues Jahr, nicht?
Yeah, thank you. Happy holidays and a Merry Christmas to you as well. Hope you get some time to relax with the kids and with your grandkids.
Same to you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you've earned it. You've earned it. I know. So
Yeah.
good. Listen, buddy, we'll pick it up again. Last time I get to speak to him this year, but we'll certainly hear it speak again in the new year. So thank you all for listening. Dieter, thank you for the work you do, and thank you for sharing your insights today.
Thank you as well. And all of you listening, have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you.